Hey, good morning to you. You listen to Oz, the Dutch Uncle, on Smash Bros. Radio. I appreciate you. If you have not done so, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. You'll find Smash Bros. On TikTok and YouTube and also Instagram, as well as Facebook. As for me, Oz, your Dutch Uncle, you can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I have my Laurel Professor with me today, Mr. Charles Brooks. Go ahead.
I must be acting right. I've been returned from banishment.
He is the Chief Legal Counsel of the National SCLC. And plus two, he comes in whenever I need when I need some type of definition and help. We have about 30 years?
Oh, yeah.
Is it 30 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh.
It's been a while. You're making me feel old.
Mr. Brooks used to come in and help with my We the People program. And so he was the one that would prep the kids for competition. And so I'm indebted to him forever. I don't know if he's happy about it, but he stuck with me because
we stuck with each other.
So he has taken time out of his busy schedule because he goes everywhere. He's over in Africa, he's over anywhere in the United States. So he's found time to come in, and we're going to talk about two subjects. We're going to talk about affirmative action, historical significance, and the relevancy. And then we're going to talk about the court cases of Alabama and Louisiana. And I think that South Carolina or North Carolina case is coming up too. Uh-huh. So I'm going to let him have it. Whenever you see Mr. Brooks gets quiet after I make a statement, that means that I'm in a gray area and he doesn't want to touch it. So I'm going to.
And that has happened many times.
Yes, to the show. So I'm going to let you have the platform.
Thank you, sir.
So then that way, because I think that we need an understanding of exactly what affirmative action is, its purpose, its significance, historical value, and is it still relevant? Because I'm finding out that those acts that were passed some time ago, we're living in a different century and a different mindset.
Right.
So do they still hold some type of relevancy? Should they be changed? Should they be modified or what? So you got it.
Okay, let's go back to the original statements of what happened and what would have been happening, not even in a perfect world, what actually took place. Post-slavery, there's all of these laws that are passed that say, hey, slaves should be free to make money. Now, what you don't hear about in the history books, which is just very obvious from the circumstances and the times, is that the some of the slaves had actual useful skills. One of the most important skills at the time in the South is what's called milling. I'm not going to get into a long drawn out. If you want to look it up, you can look it up.
Okay.
A lot of slaves had that skill set. Well, that now became something you had to pay for. A farrier is somebody who works on horse feet, make sure that a horse has healthy feet.
Oh, right.
So if you knew how to do that and somebody owned a bunch of horses, they had to pay you for it.
Right.
So there was a transfer of wealth. And the truth of the matter is, post-Civil War, African Americans would own a greater percentage of American wealth by property than they have to this day. The closest we've ever come to those numbers was right before the collapse under the Bush administration in 2008 of all property values. So what am I telling you that for? I'm telling you that it wasn't slavery and then every black person was poor and dying. That's a new narrative that's being pushed from the right, which is not actually true history. Now, were some people like that? Of course they were. If all you had was simple slave techniques, then that's it. If your value was you were on some breeding board, in other words, you were a female, the only reason why you're there is because you could have babies, and they would get you pregnant and take your kids away, which was quite common as well. There was breeding plantations. Of course, that's no longer a useful skill in this new world. But there were a lot of people who did have skills that were useful and necessary. Okay, so what happens with that wealth transfer? I'm really into something close that person you never probably heard of in history called D.P. Upham. D.P. Upham went down to Arkansas in order to make sure that blacks continued to hang on to property values and things like that. He put together a bunch of soldiers. They were very uninterested in shooting and killing whites or white night riders. He would eventually have an integrated force of black and white conscripts, which are just volunteer soldiers, who slaughtered a lot of whites. That sent a ripple through the Deep South.
Ooh.
So let's set that off to the side.
Yes, sir.
A lot of the violence takes place. Congress reacts to the violence, and because of their reaction to the violence, they begin to pass all these anti-Klan codes. So this stuff was passed in the 1800s.
Yes, sir.
That was supposed to protect you. There was a U.S. Georgia senator. She was actually a female, and she was the architect for lynching. She was born in Decatur, raised in Atlanta. As a matter of fact, one of her interviews is now on YouTube. I found it. After you talked to me about this tape, I found it 2 days ago. I'll pull up her name as we're talking later on.
Okay.
I want to say it's Lattimore, but don't hold me to that.
Yes, sir.
So, but I'll pull up her name because her interview is now on YouTube for you to look at. And she seems nice and sweet. She's about 90 something in the picture. This lady is the archetype of evil. She laid out the fact that we need to lynch these black men because when you've given them money, you've given them freedom, all they're doing is run around raping white women. That's kind of important to how things are being applied today. Story for another day.
Yes,
but anyway,
sir.
we'll come back to that.
Yes, sir.
So what's happening? Blacks are beginning to achieve wealth. So now let's go to Ida B. Wells, one of the greatest civil rights fighters the world has ever seen from the 1800s into the early 1900s. She's a writer, highly articulate. She buys a train ticket. A train ticket. In her train ticket, she wants to travel. She buys a first-class train ticket. She's sitting up front. The porter comes up and says, hey, we don't allow Negroes to sit up here. She's like, why not? She's like, you're supposed to be sitting in the back in the second class section. She said, nah, I bought a first-class ticket, bro. First-class ticket, first-class seating. She sues and wins. Nobody talks about that. The Supreme Court reversed it.
Wait, go slow. So the lower courts ruled in her favor.
In her favor.
But when it went to the Supreme Court,
they were like, we can't have these black folks sitting with white folks.
Oh.
Yeah. That's why Supreme Court appointments are important. Once again, stories for another day. I'm trying to cover, Mr. Humes put a lot on me, so I'm trying to cover a lot today. So why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all of this because the foundation of affirmative action is not black folks have been mistreated from slavery and then we had civil rights and then, no, the foundation of it is the laws that were passed to protect, to continue to allow black people to thrive. There were thriving black cities. I want to repeat that. There were thriving black cities, two of which are underneath lakes in the Deep South, one in Georgia. One in Alabama.
Right.
Where they flooded these towns because black folks were making too much money.
Jealousy.
It's about money. And that's what a lot of this stuff was about. It's about jealousy and it's about money. So let's go fast forward. So 1964, basically, it's like, hey, all right, now you can vote, start over again. And some people are like, man, that's not fair. Like, you've basically held us back 100 years. Forget slavery. We're talking about post-Civil War. So I'm not even talking about slavery at all.
You're talking after. So
I'm talking after.
Post, it means after.
The post means after, for those of you who don't know. So if you're doing that, they're like, hey, man, we're running a race, and economics is about a race, and you putting hamstrings on us. And people are like, oh, man, what's that important? Let me just point out the 2 or 3 things, some of which are not from the 1960s, some of them going up through the 1980s. 2 of the biggest things that I think racism, or 3 of the biggest things I think racism were about. Number 1, housing. When a bunch of soldiers came back from World War II, you had those first suburbs that popped up in the New Jersey, New York area based upon having been soldiers using their GI Bills to acquire property, which create Levittown housing, which now we call suburbs.
Which is pretty much cookie-cutter homes.
Cookie-cutter homes. But before that, if you look at before World War II, sometimes you had to put down as much as 50% on a house.
Wait, so 50%?
Yeah, if you wanted to buy in a city. That's why people bought homes. They were out in the country. They were farming. And a lot of these old homes, look, go to any old shotgun home sitting on a platform.
Right.
Why was it built like that? Because they built it. It wasn't a whole bunch of, I'm going to go out and hire a contractor. No, it wasn't. I know Mr. Humes. He knows me. Somebody who knows how to do a little brickwork. Well, I'm going to frame it up, put wood on it. Maybe we'll put some brick on it later. Maybe never.
Right.
Because it was costly. excuse me,
Cheap
the banks begin to understand, oh my goodness, we can use this debt and people pay it for 30 years to make us more money.
Right.
Housing begins to grow. We were locked out of that as African Americans, Latinos, Asians, somewhat not, depending upon how you want to look at the situations. So that's one. Let's go to one that's not so old, that's in me and Mr. Hume's generation. Pell Grant. It used to be.
BEOG.
Yeah. You can go in, people were putting down their grants, and they were going to college.
Right.
All of a sudden, that became evil. That became wasted tax dollars. Look at all this grant fraud. They've been grant fraud forever. By fraud, they meant people who used the money, went to college, maybe kicked it for a year or two, and then they never paid it back or whatever it did. Because you pay back the loans, but you didn't pay back the grants, right? So that became something bad. That's in the 80s. These are all wealth transfer issues. Other ones. The notion that welfare is a bad thing is extremely modern. When I say extremely, I mean extremely. If you look back at it, there are old movies you can look up from the 50s where the guy is going in and getting his welfare check, and he was just a hardworking guy who had taken a bad turn. The notion of welfare being something negative really started off in the late 60s, early 70s, when the notion of them lazy folks. Well,
Right.
before it was people who are down. And also you can see that in modern day today. And then those of you who are even younger, if you were alive in the 80s, crack epidemic was horrible. These evil people getting hooked on crack, dying. Now, meth is America's health crisis. It's interesting. The language is totally different. So I'm saying all of that to say you got to understand how those language changes. So, okay, what does all that have to do with affirmative action charge? You're going around the mulberry bush. I'm really not. Because of the structures that were put in place that held African Americans in particularly back, the thought was you have to take affirmative action to give an equal opportunity. That's all it was about. We will affirmatively fight to give you a place to go for your differential. Let's go into actual application of it, right? You got two kids applying to college at Harvard University. One of them goes to blank inner city school, name your school, Parker, Huffman, whatever you want to name. The other kid goes to private school in downtown Birmingham. They had similar grades, but the kid from the private school has a much higher board score, ACT, SAT. I think it's reasonable to assume that the person who's going to the school that costs $50,000 a year has access to a few more resources
Correct.
than the person going to a public school. I
Right.
think we can all agree on that.
Correct.
So affirmative action was, okay, that differential probably calls for a differential in prepping ability, knowing what was on the test, all of that stuff. Let's help this kid and object, because we're not trying to not get the best. We're just trying to make sure we don't overlook the best because of circumstances they came from.
Correct.
Right? So if you take me and Mr. Humes right now and gave us a tennis racket and taught us tennis, okay, you get a couple of million over 50 playing tennis. If you get some kid who's 20 years old and let's say from Central Africa who's never seen a tennis racket, we probably beat him for about 2 months.
Right.
And once he figures out how it really works,
A month.
He's going to run these fat old men from side to side till we pass out on the court. That's what affirmative action is about. If you think about it in sports terms, it's, okay, I understand I found somebody who's at a place who's not as advanced as these other two people. That doesn't make them better athletes.
Right. Correct.
I need to be able to find that raw diamond in the rough and build them up. How many times do we hear about athlete blah, blah, blah? They found him in the middle of blah, blah, blah.
Right.
All of a sudden, they train him for the NFL. He's an NFL player.
Down in Miami.
Christian Okoye, who was the running back at Kansas City. He didn't know anything about football, but he was a super athlete. I just saw a report over the weekend. University of Alabama invited some kid from Germany who absolutely wrecked shop just because he was bigger and stronger than, a bunch of kids out there. So they're talking about giving him a scholarship. They don't care what his skill set is because they're like, if we're good coaches, we can teach him.
Correct.
Guess what? Harvard and Cornell think the same way. You give us the best material, will produce a great graduate.
Right.
Because we don't care about what's coming in the door. We care about what's going out the door.
The end results.
The end result. Same thing, affirmative action in terms of contracts. The thought process was, it can't be that everybody who knows how to lay down road work is a white male. There has to be some knowledge spread amongst these other people. You give them an opportunity and grow it. What's the prime example? Affirmative action was applied heavily at Atlanta's airport. Affirmative action wasn't really applied at Birmingham's airport.
Oh, wow.
Birmingham's airport was bigger than Atlanta's airport, probably prior to 1970 or so.
Okay.
Does anybody on this radio station think that they're even in the same realm of each other right now?
Oh, no. No.
Now, there's some other factors. People tell me, oh, well, more people move to Atlanta. I got you. I understand that. There's some other things. It's not strict factors. I'm not trying to make this is an apples to apples comparison. But what I am saying is the Atlanta airport didn't fall off the cliff because they had aggressive affirmative action. So that's what affirmative action is. You can call it affirmative action. And for purpose of the listeners for today, I call it affirmative opportunities. I want to cast the biggest net to find the best wherever they are. And you're not going to tell me what to do. And oh, by the way, the court system seems to ignore their previous 100-year history of courts don't know how to run businesses.
See?
And if they don't know how to run businesses, they don't know how to run universities.
Correct.
So if Harvard, Cornell, MIT, and Harvard's considered the #1 university in the world, definitely in the top 3. You're going to probably throw Oxford in there. Maybe the engineering school that's in India. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's only engineering, so I don't think you can really make it as #1 overall. And there's a school in Japan, I think, that's really like for the super elite. And there's some ones in South Korea. But most people in those countries, if they could get into Harvard, they send their kids to Harvard. Harvard's been practicing affirmative action literally for about 40 years now. So why are they still in the top 10? If it's such a bad idea, and it's not, why? Because the rigors of being a Harvard student didn't change for the black student.
Right.
It's affirmative action's entrance, no affirmative action graduates. That also applies to contracts.
Please repeat that again so that people understand.
Yes. There's affirmative action in admission. There are no affirmative action graduates.
You come in, you have to do the same work as everybody else. You have to prove yourself.
110%. And quite frankly, for some people, it's better not even to go there. Let's assume you can be admitted there, but the way that they're handling their chemistry and their stuff makes it very hard for you to become a doctor. And instead, you go there and you end up becoming an English major.
Right.
Okay. Maybe you would have been better suited going to Howard and then getting a little bit more tutoring.
Thank you.
And you still become a doctor.
Correct.
So all of this stuff, even though it's well-intentioned from Harvard's standpoint, doesn't even necessarily benefit the individual the most.
Correct.
But that still doesn't change how they graduate, because you just got to graduate.
Yes, sir.
So those are the issues in terms of how affirmative action is. So why are we bringing this up to now? The Harvard case. Harvard case is very peculiar, right? And I'm going to walk softly on my feet on this one because I don't really know how it started, but it does seem odd. The original person, if I understand it correctly, and I could be wrong, I'm sure some people do the research on it, I haven't yet, how the case started. My understanding, it was an outside group, not even Asian students, who brought a case on behalf of Asian students.
Correct.
That's what I've been told numerous times. Okay, so if that's true, how did this thing even get started? It's a political device for people who don't understand the ramifications of it.
Correct.
So let's go back to when Texas did the same thing. Remember, Texas stepped in, we're going to get rid of affirmative action. We're going to do it. We're going to wipe it out. And they did.
Right.
And that very next class, you had fewer white males in the class.
Explain why.
Because the amount of Asians quadrupled. Because if you're just going on board scores, number one in the board scores are not whites. It's not blacks. It's not Latinos. It's Asians.
I mean, that's a fact.
That's just a fact. So all of a sudden, all these people who hated affirmative action, you just need to score the best, all of a sudden they came back and said, we need to change it. Black people have been hit so hard by this. And if you believed that in Texas they were worried about black folks. I got a bridge to say. They were worried about white kids who couldn't get into UT.
Correct.
So they changed it to say if you're at the top percentage of your individual high school, you could still be considered. Magically, the number of white students
But they
accepted
didn't
it.
use the word affirmative.
They didn't. Magically, the number of white males in the school went back to pre-changed numbers. And of course, they brought in black students now too at larger numbers. And everybody said, "Oh, see, the blacks are happy." Think about it. Don't be stupid. For people who out there listening, figure out what really took place there. That was very obvious. That's why, when people have asked me again and again, you think the Supreme Court is going to strike it down? No. Because you're going to reduce the spots for white males at Ivy League schools if you rule in these plaintiffs' favor. The numbers are 100% about what the change will be. But more importantly, it doesn't make sense.
Correct.
You're asking a bunch of judges, and in this case, these outside issues, to decide how people who have studied their entire lives, the admission matrix that they use to admit students, no, I don't like the way you're doing it. We got a better way. Excuse me. Was that me?
Well, I don't know.
Okay. Whatever the matrix is that they're using, they're still number one. Cornell is still considered, there's something that's happening. Cornell is still considered top engineering school. Right. MIT is considered top engineering school. So if these methods are so bad, why are they still at the top? It doesn't make sense to anybody with good common sense.
Correct.
I said a lot. Did I answer any questions? And yes. I want to stay on this before, because I know I'm moving fast because I'm trying to make sure we get the other one, because I think it's quick. We only got about 12 more minutes on this one.
Is it still relevant? So you're saying that it's still relevant because the individuals that brought this suit, I know you're going to not say anything. From what I understand, the individuals that brought this suit were supposedly conservatives.
Correct. That's what I've heard.
And they were concerned, quote unquote, because of certain things.
Right.
But they did it under disguise as in supporting the Koreans, but it had nothing to do with them. They just wanted, it was a political ploy to try to change something they didn't have any understanding about.
Let me talk about what I think is a difference. Mr. Hume's less so.
Okay.
I think you can carve conservatives into different camps.
Yes, sir.
And they're fiscal conservatives who care but nothing about money.
Correct.
And you got these social conservatives who tend to come from a poor background, and they want to get on the internet, and they want to get some broadcast, and they want to whoop up people because they want to get people behind them because they want to make money.
Correct.
Before Rush Limbaugh passed away, it was about making money. Right. I don't know if he believed in anything that he talked about, because a lot of his positions changed and swift became on what he thought was popular. Okay? That's true for a lot of these guys. Fiscal conservatives really are thinking about the money. How does this affect my wealth? I am already rich. I'm worth 100 million. How do I get to 2 billion?
Correct.
I'm worth $1 billion. How do I get to 100 billion?
Correct.
I'm worth 100 billion. Why am I not worth more money than Elon Musk? Those guys are different than these other conservatives. And so to kind of, I hope I'm not skirting the question and I'm answering it. I think part of it is that set of conservatives is not interested in anything that might disturb the way money works, and money works through connections. So one of the controversies, and I'm not speaking to it because I don't know for sure, the rumor is Jared Kushner, the President Trump's son-in-law, got in because his dad paid $10 million.
Exactly.
The Kushners made a monster donation, and then he gets admitted. That's kind of known. Whether or not you want to link something together, hey, that's for you to decide. But my point of it is, if that's okay, why is affirmative action wrong?
Correct.
Because your whole notion of it is there should be one way to get in and based upon achievement.
Correct.
And schools shouldn't be able to let people in who pay more money. If you did that, every college collapses.
Totally.
I know I know of a circumstance in particular. I'm going to walk a little carefully because I'm on the radio. But somebody of great wealth, and I do mean in the $1 billion status, not a question. It kind of leaked when I was in law school how they got in. And it was clear the person wasn't going to class.
Get out.
Was not. Was not. So nobody says that that's wrong. Like, why isn't that a constitutional issue? Why is this race issue on affirmative action? Why? Because it's a hot button issue.
Yes, sir.
Blacks are getting something off your back. That's basically the level of the argument. That's why it goes back to the original thing I was talking about with welfare. Welfare was okay because it was predominantly white. It was coming out of the Depression era. Now
Please repeat that. It was predominantly white.
It was predominantly white. And here's the other thing. Now look at the rising numbers of the poverty rate, the homeless rate, and the amount of people who are kids going home hungry every night. Remember how they used to talk about all these lazy welfare queens,
Yes,
and they show black woman, da-da-da. But now they're showing hungry America. It's white kids in the rural South. Guess what, people? The numbers hadn't changed really all that much.
No, it's just been hidden.
It's just been hidden. They don't want to talk about it. And they try to shame conservative whites who are poor into going, well, you can't complain about this or else you like the blacks. And it puts them in a trick bag. Anyway, now I'm talking iceberg slim talk. For any of y'all who don't know what a trick bag is,
So
that's a whole nother show. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So it still have relevancy now.
110%.
Should it be modified?
I think it is being, and let me back it up. The modifications that take place are taking place on a level you don't see because you got people at Ivy League schools, at the University of Alabama, trying to figure out what their numbers are because things change. Let's be honest. I am proud graduate of the University of Alabama. I am very happy. But the academic rigor it takes to accept the University of Alabama, I probably would get in there. But when I got in, I think I was probably in the top 10%. I was trying to go to Stanford. Alabama was just a place I applied to make sure I got into some college, right? There's not a slang on my university. My university's worked very hard to grow its university. But now, there's two different stories about black kids being recruited away from HBCUs to go to University of Alabama. And Alabama was like, oh, you got a 30 on your ACT? We pay for your school. We pay for your housing. We pay for your food. HBCUs can't compete with that. And that's what the story was about, that the guy had gone to Morehouse. Yeah, he went to Morehouse. And he wanted Morehouse to offer his nephew. The nephew was like, Morehouse only talking about half the tuition. And that was like, I will be free of debt. Zero. Don't have to pay for my housing. Don't have to ask my parents for any food. All I got to do is give me the same money they would give me, da-da-da-da, and I don't live in the house anymore. That's a hard one to beat.
Yes, sir.
That's a hard one to beat. So the kid went to Alabama. So I'm saying that to say universities make calculations all the time. And to your question, the calculation of what it takes to reach affirmative action is different. And I'll even go, people might consider this conservative. I don't. You got to ratchet back affirmative action in Atlanta in the construction industry because now you got folks.
Right.
You got dudes with $50 million companies who can do road work, who can do bridge work. They got the engineers. They can do it.
Yes, sir.
So you would apply it differently or less stringently than you would here in Alabama. And as you just recently saw, the reason why it was necessary was on AL.com. Some minority contractors weren't being paid, or at least that's the allegation that they're making. So affirmative action is not just about getting the contract. It's about getting the money.
Right. The end result.
The end result. And the end result should be positive. Here's another thing. What black person have you ever heard say, man, I want them to work on affirmative action, but I don't care about the quality of the roads and the bridges?
Ooh,
never say it.
Never.
Because we know that if you get poor quality infrastructure development, it crumbles.
Yes, sir.
It 100% does. So nobody wants that. They want functionality to America, but they want a functional opportunity for those who study and try. And I will say this. Forget everybody else. African-American males who go into HBCUs are now graduating at lower rates than they have, I think, since the 40s, some crazy number. Like they're getting in, obviously, in more numbers.
Yes, sir.
But they're not graduating. And there's complaints about debt and why I rack up all that debt. Well, what were you doing when you were there? Now, let's be honest.
Let's be realistic.
How many of y'all going to college to pledge?
Oh, don't go there.
Don't go there. Don't go there. All right.
But that's the truth, because I know Some.
Some, not all.
I know several, but I know, let's say some. I know some that's the only reason why they went. I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
You wanted those letters on your chest so bad that you wasted 2 years. Well, in my eyes, you wasted 2 years. In your eyes, you did. You got those letters.
Okay.
But you didn't get anything else.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, your priorities are messed
Screwed
up. So we still need affirmative action.
I think so.
And in its own way, it is being modified because there's some universities, some institutions that actually understand its significance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I make a quick announcement about
Sure.
some of this? The FAA's air traffic controller class where the federal government is supposed to pay for the tuition at FAA.gov. Today is the last day to register.
Ooh.
Starting salary is $103,000, as high as $164,000. No college degree required.
Say that one more time, please.
The FAA air traffic controllers application date. Today is the last day. It just hit me in the head. I'm sorry, Mr.
No, good. Go ahead.
And the salaries start, if you graduate from their class, $103,000. You can be 19, making $100,000, pass the FAA class. I was told because they're so short, they're waiving all the fees to take the class and even try it.
Where can they find it?
www.faa.gov/BE-ATC. But go to the FAA.gov website and you just got to find the air traffic controllers class.
Okay.
Today, I think, is the last day to apply. I'm sorry, I hate to throw
that.
But we're talking about economics and money and all these things.
Because they need to know that. And you don't have to have a college degree.
Don't have to have a college.
But you have to go through their training.
You have to go through and there's a bunch of stuff like that. Let's go through 4. I hate to take you off, and I know we're tight on time.
No, go ahead.
FAA air traffic controller. You don't have to go to college, and you can make $100,000. Pilot typically is 1 year's training. You're gonna make about 40 to 50, starting off.
Yes, sir.
But you can get into the six figures really quickly if you know what you're doing.
Correct.
No college required. Tech at a nuclear facility. Actually, we're about 2,000 jobs short for the country. If you graduate from the class, I think it takes a semester. You average making $47,000 right off the bat.
Which is like 3 months when you say 3 to 4 months semester.
Yeah. And 12 weeks maximum, and we've talked about this one before, power line jobs, which they still have the training for over at Lawson. And you get the training, and you start off and there's a lot of people who are 20 years old, 2 years out of high school, making $110,000 a year.
You have to come back so that we can talk about.
There's so many
things because you've helped my kids out tremendously by telling them about the internships and stuff that's out there.
And here's the thing. I don't want to hear any arguments about the knowledge is being hidden. Okay?
Yes, sir.
I've heard other African Americans tell me, I'm talking about sitting around a bunch of lawyers. I was like, get out of here with that crap. It's our job to teach these kids. They get on the internet and they find the nastiest rap songs they want to find in 2 seconds. Not that I'm being a hypocrite about it. I love 2 Live Crew growing up. I ain't gonna lie to you about it. But my point of it is they can find whatever they want to find. Tell them to find this.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm off my
No, because see, you brought that a point when it came to my seniors in school, because college was never intended for everybody.
Correct.
You can still get a good paying job with benefits.
Correct.
Without a college degree.
And let me talk to this other person. The person who went there, I wanted to be an engineer, found out I didn't want to do calculus. I became a criminal justice major or philosophy or something just to get my mama off my back because I was going to get a degree. I get that.
Yes, sir.
This stuff applies to you too.
Thank you.
If you're 22 to 24, 25, okay, you got a degree in philosophy. Become an air traffic controller.
Thank you.
You make $100,000. Who cares the fact you didn't have to go to college to get it? If you got a degree you can't use or you don't want to use it the way, because, oh my goodness, the 2 number 1 degrees amongst struggling black kids, I can tell you right now, it's criminal justice and it's psychology. We run to those things like nanny going north. I am not knocking a degree. My only point of it is, unless you want to be a cop.
And there's nothing wrong with being a cop.
Nothing wrong with being a cop. Get a criminal justice degree. If you go in there to become a lawyer, you need to be graduating above a 3.5 so you can get into law school.
Thank
You're not going to graduate, thank you, Lordy, and become a lawyer.
Yes,
or at least
sir.
I don't think you can, but you've made a tough road for yourself.
Right.
For those who graduating by the skin of their teeth. If that's your situation you find you in, don't sit around moping going, oh man, I got a degree I can't use. Okay, that was dumb if you didn't know how to use it before you got it.
Thank you.
But make the correction. There's all of these jobs where you can make six figures. You can make up a couple $100,000 in abstract control after about 10, 15 years. And that's in today's dollars. So that would be
And that's a
300.
federal government job.
That's federal government job. Best benefits. Best health insurance.
Retirement.
Best. Some of that stuff. And when they want to buy them out, right? Now, I know this is for the DOJ, so I don't know about anything, but for the Department of Justice, occasionally they buy people out after 20 years. What does that mean? They get a full pension in their 40s.
They buy them out.
They buy them out.
Why?
Got too many in one place. President want to get some rich people. I've heard of 60% and even 80% buyouts for certain government jobs when they want to clear it out. Now, what does that mean, a 60% buyout? You're going to get the equivalent of 60% of your salary to the day you die. And you ain't dead.
Please repeat that.
You get 60% of your salary to the day you die.
Because, see, as a teacher,
Right.
retiring.
Teachers do it all the time. Teachers retire in the state of Alabama after they hit their pension. Then they move to Georgia.
Right.
Move to Louisiana. Why? Because they can still get paid. Why? They still getting the pension. Pension still coming in. Now they getting the salary plus the pension. And and people retire and go to places all the time, especially when teachers live near a border.
Yes, sir.
Like if they live in Chattanooga or they live in Huntsville, like, okay, I'll retire from Huntsville and now I'm going to start teaching in whatever that city is just north of Huntsville.
Memphis?
Memphis way on the other
Okay.
side. Way on the other side. Just north. No, Chattanooga's too far out. You got to take a look. You'd have to drive a bit to Chattanooga. But let's just say Chattanooga.
Yes, sir.
So you're going to drive about 30, 45 minutes when you're there. So what? Now I'm getting this Tennessee teacher's pay. I got an Alabama retirement.
See?
I'm golden. There it is. Okay. We got to get to the other one now.
Yes, sir. Now, there have been two cases.
Yes, sir.
Alabama has been ruled in favor of blacks. Let's make it simplistic.
Yep.
Same way with Louisiana.
Yep.
Now, when I get into the history of why,
Right.
because we know
Because we're out of time. No,
we know it's gerrymandering that was
Right.
involved. So we're not going to get into the history of, but the significance of those two cases, and I think, was it South Carolina has yet to be ruled on, but Alabama and Georgia when it comes to the voting rights.
Alabama and Louisiana.
Yeah, Alabama and Louisiana. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Number one, gerrymandering is cutting up a district historically because of political reasons. So it went back to a case where they cut up a district so bad it looked like a dragon.
Yeah.
And that's what started it. That was a case I forgot the year. Okay. Now you know what it means. Districts were cut up because Alabama used to be Democratic. So you had less of this kind of thing, and you usually have white male Democratic leadership leading these districts. Alabama becomes Republican, and Republican states all over the South start cutting up districts to cut blacks out of being able to vote. Then you had a bunch of lawsuits, which conservatives fought at first to have these predominantly black districts. Well, quite frankly, conservatives didn't fight too hard about those districts. Because what they realized was, if you push all the blacks in one district, I can make all the rest of them white conservative as much as I want to because I've gotten rid of the blacks and I pushed them into one district. Alabama did it so bad, despite the fact having so many districts. What is it, 6 or 7?
7.
So say having 7, you only had one black district. Black
6.
people, yeah.
The 6.
The 6. Black people make up 27% of the state. So they basically it's like, hey, 1 in 4 black, and they only got 1 out of 7. Bro, you got to do better than that. And with a simple change, and I looked at the map, it's as simple as this to break it down. You take Barber County, which is overwhelmingly white, out of one district, move it into another. Move Tuskegee and Montgomery fully into one district, and it's fine. Somebody raised the concern that, now Terry Sewell is under the gun because they changed the district. She's like, don't bother me. She's already looked at the map, said, I'm going to win anyway. And she is. She's non-controversial.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? If you want somebody fire breathing, all that stuff, that's not Terry Sewell.
No.
But she is on the House and Ways Committee, and she can make some things happen for you, for those who want to go up and talk to her. But the point of it is, she doesn't seem concerned about her district, and politicians know their numbers.
Oh, if they don't know nothing else.
If they don't know nothing else, they know their voting numbers. So if she's unconcerned, the notion that she's going to lose to some Republican, get out of here with that stuff.
Ain't no way.
Ain't no way. So you're going to create 2 majority black districts very easily by moving Montgomery. And what happens is, I believe, if I understand the way they changed the map, Sewell is going to pick up a lot more north of I-20. But they act like that area is predominantly white. Fultondale, Gardendale.
Thank you.
That ain't Coleman.
No.
Let's stop pretending like we don't know what's what. And that's why I believe, this is just my personal belief, you're beginning to hear all these fights about the belt line.
Oh, now they want to worry about the belt.
Now they want to worry about the belt line.
So you're talking about congressional 6 and 2. But that's, I can't think of, but that's a white man. Well, all of them white, but.
Yeah, all of them are white. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. About
because District 2, he's going to be highly upset.
Martha Roby was in the district at one point in time, conservative white female. And then when a federal judge in Montgomery beat his wife bloody and pulled the hair out of her head, and she complained about it with Terry Sewell, she lost her seat to another Republican. That's something nobody wants to talk about.
Stop.
Look up the history of what happened when she opposed keeping that guy in, who just absolutely. And the police report is still online if you want to pull it up. And the audio used to be, I don't know if it's still up, of her screaming on 911. And nobody stood up for her. And when I say nobody, I mean Democratic senators too, who were female. They didn't seem to be too interested in talking about that story either. Story for another day. Hot topic for another day.
And you talk about interrelated or interconnected. So like a tapestry of individuals who are woven together.
Correct. And the question becomes, why did she lose her vote?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she'd ever tell anybody, but I would love for you to be able to interview and ask her about those circumstances. I don't think she's going to tell you squat, though.
No, because for lack of another word, the machine is still viable.
And this is one of those silent moments for me. Mr. Humes. And people have asked me before, too, why do you leave Mr. Humes hanging? I don't leave Mr. Humes hanging. Mr. Humes knows what's what. Please. Get out of here with that.
He's not leaving me hanging. He just let me know. Now, you get into a gray area, I'm not going to touch it. So you need to work your way out of it.
I don't need my law firm sued. Get out of here with that. Mr. Humes can say whatever Mr. Humes want to say. But yeah, so the 2 districts that would become predominantly black would be 2 and 7. And the heart of 2 would then be Montgomery, which it doesn't even make sense. Why is Montgomery not one district?
Thank you.
Makes no sense.
But see, you have to understand, too, you're dealing with WASP. You're dealing with white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men over 50. Now, what we consider to be common sense isn't common sense, because what you did is basically simplified and is really elementary, because all you have to do is look at the map correctly, transparently, to understand that if you just move certain cities into, you can get it without really debating, because it's there in front of you. But you don't want to step on anybody's toes, because everybody's scared, well, if you give them that, well, then I'm not going to get reelected. Well, there's a possibility you're not going to get reelected anyway, because you know your numbers.
Right. So these arguments are important. Now, you might ask me, okay, we got another 20 minutes to show. Why is it so important? Why do I think it needs so much time? We got to examine what it means to be leaders in those districts.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to just a short thing, something easy.
Yes, sir.
Congressmen get to recommend somebody to go to the academies. I think it's 2 per.
Right.
So they get 2 recommendations to the Army, 2 to the Navy, 2 to the Air Force, 2 to the Coast Guard. I believe that's it.
Those are from the senators.
That's just senators?
Senators.
Oh, I thought the reps could too. Okay.
Before I graduated, that's when Senator Allen and Dickerson were senators.
Yeah.
And so I became the asshole or the jackass of the family, because I had already been to the Air Force Academy.
Uh,
I've already spent most of my life. I'm not going to do it. But my relatives had already contacted Sparkman and Dickerson.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know about the Congress. I know that the senators, so yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause you know who's notorious for getting people in was oh my God, from South Carolina, Strom Thurmond.
Yes, sir.
He sent a lot of it. And for those who don't know, and I don't know if you can still do it anymore, he used to do deals. So let's say you wanted some pork going to your district out in Wyoming. Well, Senator, I want you to recommend this young man to the Naval Academy from behalf of Wyoming who lives in South Carolina.
Right.
And sometimes guys are like, well, it's quick, it's easy, nobody really cares. Well, what people didn't know is he was cutting those deals. Trump was cutting those deals all over the country.
Yes, sir.
And so instead of recommending 2, he was typically recommending 20, 50 kids to these academies.
He held a lot of power.
A lot of power. And what happened was because he did that going back to the 60s and 70s before people really caught on to what he's doing. Well, think if you're doing 60 or 70 a class, you're creating generals beholden to you.
Right.
It changed how we appropriated funds. And then when Jesse Helms caught on to what he was doing by the time the 80s came along, Helms got in on it. And that's why Helms and Strom Thurmond were like bosom buddies. Because the word was they told their people, okay, the Carolinas stick together.
Twins.
They were. That was.
Who's the lesser of the evil?
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of people have revisionist history about Strom Thurmond because, he got confirmed he got one black girl who was a teenager. I think she was 13, pregnant when he was in college. Look it up. Those numbers are what they are. And even though I've seen a report, one, they tried to change his Wikipedia page. They said she was 16. She wasn't 16. She was 13. If you go back and look at
But he was in college.
He was in college. So even if she was 16 and she was working in their house, y'all don't find that to be a problem. She was.
He was in college.
He was in college.
See, that's the thing. But he was in college. So, okay, he was in college, but he was still older than she was. So him being in college has no significance. He basically, whatever word you want to use.
Right.
So,
because if she was 13, he was in college. She was in 7th grade.
See? He was in college.
Some people are so sick. But anyway,
moving
on. Moving on.
Okay, so we have those two. You have Alabama
and Louisiana.
Same
issues. You have these districts cut up. Here's the other thing I wanted to cover with Mr. Humes, and he didn't even know I'm surprised at him. We're going to see how he interviews on his feet. Look, the other thing, and I wrote an article about it, it's being published today out of the SCLC's White House district. And I'll give you a link back in case you want to read over it and we can come back to it. Well, I just emailed it to you. I got a copy of it anyway. But it's being published today. The issue is, how does this affect gerrymandering when you're in a city where you have like-minded individuals? Let me be very specific because some people are like, well, what are you talking about? Austin, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee are in conservative states. They're big cities with over 1 million people, at least in their MSA. MSA just means the people living around. When you count the suburbs and everything around it, blah, blah, blah. You got to move 1 million. I think it's over 2 actually in Austin. Why are you cutting up those districts? Those people are neighbors. You can't both have this argument that I don't believe in color, I don't believe in race, I'm a good conservative, I don't believe in any of that stuff. Why do you believe in cutting up these Democratic districts when these people are neighbors with each other? Why are you cutting it up so in a way that they can't communicate with each other and have representation? So if you believe that, and the answer is you don't.
Right.
So just stop saying it. That's my only point. Stop lying.
They don't know how.
Oh, man. If you look at the maps, look at the congressional maps for all your audience. Pull up the congressional maps for state of Tennessee. Look how Nashville is just cut up. Because right now, I think the numbers are based upon the division. But for those you don't know, the number of members of the House of Representatives doesn't change. What happens is you take the total census population, you divide it in. That's how you figure out how many districts you get.
Because I thought during the census we were supposed to lose a congressional district, but I guess we didn't. So
I thought we came really close to picking one up.
Okay.
I thought we came really close. But anyway, the numbers of lost districts, picked up districts are there. Texas has picked up quite a few. But if you believe in this stuff and da-da-da-da-da, why would you cut up Austin?
Thank you.
Why are you cutting up Houston? Why are you cutting up Dallas? Why can't you let people...
They don't want unity.
At all. Because we're not talking about Okay, Charles, you saying not having black districts? I'm saying you might get a black representative in some of these places.
But they're like-minded individuals.
Right now, and I ran the numbers, Nashville is 30% black, Davidson County, right? All of the countywide constitutional officers are black. Every last one of them.
And it hasn't fallen to shame.
And none of the white voters in that area are going, oh my goodness, we regret putting them in. No. I mean, I've met two of them personally. Look, why are we saying that that's the issue?
Right.
Why are we letting hate mongers divide people on that? I'm talking about on both sides. I don't care how way you cut it.
Right.
But nobody want to talk about that. It's crazy. Anyway.
They don't want unity. As long as they have fragmentation, they have the power. Okay. I appreciate you.
Yeah. We still got a bucket 12. Well, how many minutes we got? I don't know. I know we're coming in tight.
Well, it's 9:47.
We can go as long as you want to.
Okay.
I'm not in the rush at all.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, that's a rare.
That is rare. I was to let your audience know, Mr. Hughes called me the other day, and I was like, yeah, that's right, because my thing now is supposed to be, for these 3 days, I wasn't even supposed to be in the state. I thought I was going to have to call in something, but no. So it was canceled. So I'm free today. Today is actually a free day to me.
But the next time you come in,
sure,
if you bring in those employment, like you did
yes,
with
yes. Yeah, I did. Okay. I'll do that.
So if you would bring those in, so then that way we can discuss, because there's more than 4 out there. But you were just mentioning those off the top, but there's more because you mentioned internships during the summer in which the students could go for the internship. It's out of state, and that was one of the questions that they had. Well, I don't want to leave the state. You're not married.
Right.
You have no responsibility. You're not married. You don't have children. So why are you scared of moving? You're going to an internship.
One of the worst things that I had happen, there was somebody who was a connection from state Alabama who was working a federal program for internships at Howard. Because Howard had worked really hard to get in the mix. And I had parents who I knew both in, because SCLC, I'm all over the South. I had parents in Louisiana, Mississippi. I'm not sending my baby up there. Who knows what's going to happen? I was like, hey, I can't tell you nothing can happen to your child in a dorm, da-da-da-da. And maybe your kid is the problem. Who knows? They say. But don't complain about the opportunities your kid can't get in 2 or 3 years because you won't put your kids in these programs.
Correct.
You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yes, sir.
So don't stick your baby underneath your wing and make sure that your baby got to stay under you all summer long. Or only thing I want my kid to do is summer, or it's summertime. That's when I used to relax. Okay. I mean, I ain't knocking it. You a good parent, whatever. Your kid's okay. But you can got your kid behind. The other issue that I think is becoming wildly apparent to everybody, and you used to bring me on about this issue all the time. Come on, everybody. You do now understand your kid is not competing against the white kid who lives in Alabama. Your kid is also competing against some Vietnamese kid who's been raised in Montreal. You do understand there's some kid who was raised in the Caribbean, who's going to school in Colombia, who's going to come to America speaking 3 languages.
Fluently,
because he grew up speaking Spanish. He learned English because he was watching TV.
Correct.
And he studied something else when he was getting his business degree.
Right.
So, okay, you don't want to get your kids prepared, but do not complain about the result of it. It's sad. I saw something with a mother. She was talking about something totally different. She was talking about crime. She was like, mom's raising mom. I was a teenage kid. I did the best I could. Yeah, and some teenage moms have put their kids in programs and classes to get things and get them to grow.
Exactly.
And the reason why we know that's easy, I don't know the black mother who has a 7th grader who's over 6 feet tall who doesn't figure out how to get him into AAU. I ain't never seen that. I ain't never seen it. That kid has the athletic ability. You do the research, you know where to put them, and you put them there.
Yes, sir.
So if your kid has an academic skill, treat it the same way. Oh, we don't even have time for this. I'm hitting it. It's too late. The Pythagorean theorem had a new proof offered by 2 black girls out of New Orleans.
Get out.
And they don't, it hasn't gone through the academic strenuousness.
Yes, sir.
They just didn't have their books, couldn't figure out how the teacher did it, came up with something that they thought worked. They both did it, and a teacher looked at it and was like, "Oh my goodness, it works." Said, "I don't know what this is," and so they've done newspaper articles about it because it's like another arm of math. For those of you who don't understand, one of the reasons why the pyramids are hard to replicate, we don't know the math. And it's just as simple as that. Nobody wants to come out and say it. We don't understand the math behind moving stones that far, that big, over a few thousand years ago.
Yes, sir.
So maybe they were using some other kind of math. Maybe they were using, look, we found that a working computer. This is a fact. You can look it up. The oldest working computer is BC. They found the thing encrusted in shells, and when they cleaned it up, it's a working computer. You can look it up. So I'm just saying those knowledges are out there. And back to my point, the knowledge of our kids, and our kids can be the next discoverer. What if you are raising a kid who can figure out how to get us past the Hyperloop? In other words, get a vehicle moving fast enough that we can explore the outer rims of space without sitting in a ship 10 years.
There you go.
Come on now, let's be better.
Because if you can put emphasis and significance on an athlete, why are you putting academics to the second?
Right.
Because you can use the same.
You can. And don't act like the programs ain't out there. You don't want to look for them.
And you probably find more internships when it comes to academia than when it comes to athletes.
Exactly. And maybe your kid has an interest in something that you don't know about. And that's fine. I'm not sitting here some know-it-all like, oh, he's going to know about now. No, it don't work that way. What I don't know can fill 1,000 encyclopedias. Let's be honest.
Thank you.
But I'm trying. I'm reading.
I mean,
and you can do the same.
This is your child.
Bingo.
And plus, too, you have to look, if you really want to look selfish, you raise this child, you sacrifice this child. You want this child to take care of you when you're older. So you need to focus on those things that make this child successful. So that way, when you get old, listen, I need help, and your child is going to help you.
Right.
So, look at it. You're going to be selfish. You're going to be old. You're going to be dying one day. You need help.
Right. So if your kid want to move back in with you, why don't you say, hey, look at this FAA program, become an air traffic controller. Because that way, 20 years from now, you ain't got to go to that nursing home.
Right. And I won't even be in your house. You can put me in the mother-in-law's house in the backyard.
That you make.
An acre away from me.
Right.
So you need to think of it. You're selfish.
I know this is way out there. Don't you think that's what the tiny home movement is about?
Yes, sir.
People began to pay $40,000, $50,000, put a tiny home on their property, and then there's mama, and I can walk to her, but I don't have to see her every day.
See? I mean, let's be honest.
They cost less than a car now.
Yes, sir.
They cost less than a car.
You still love your mama, but you don't want to see your mama every day.
Right. And you put that tiny home out there, all you got to do is give it a water line, give it a gas line, give it some electricity.
And 9 times out of 10, your mama don't want to see you every day. She will still want to be independent.
Absolutely.
She still wants her own place. She has her own place.
Yeah.
And she's far away. When she wants to see the grandchildren, she can, but she can all of a sudden, now it's time for you to go home.
There you go.
So it's a win-win for both.
110%. 110%.
But next time you come on, if you'll bring those listing of the employment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I think we can do 30 minutes, if not an hour, because there's a lot of internship. And again, I want to publicly say to you, I appreciate what you did for my kids, because several have become successful because of 4 of them have become attorneys because of going through the We the People program and because of your mentoring them.
Well, but yes, sir.
Well, yeah, okay. But, okay, I appreciate you sharing that, but we really know where it came from. But I want to publicly acknowledge what you did because I don't think that I could have brought them to the level that you brought.
Yeah, but I would have never even met them but for you. And the sad part about it is those programs are going all over the state, but a lot of people are not participating.
Right.
Story for another day, or maybe not.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you. Hey, know that it's Tuesday. Please, if you don't have to be out there, please don't be outside. Make sure you stay hydrated. Check on the elderly. Check on your the pets and all. Yeah, know your value. Know your worth. Know that you are the one that creates obstacles for yourself. And most importantly, know that I love you more than I love my luggage. I will see y'all tomorrow. Take care. The live stream on the show. On the show. The live stream. On the show. The live stream. The live stream.